Let's find the inverse of this function. So first we write it in a friendly format. So y equals log base 8 of x minus 5. Then we're going to switch the places of the x and the y. So this is going to become x equals log base 8 of y minus 5. Then notice that the base is 8. So we're going to raise both sides to the, or rather make the base on both sides 8. So the left side would become 8 to the x, and the right side would become 8 to the log base 8 of y minus 5. The log base 8 and the base 8 cancel each other out. So that tells us that we're going to have y minus 5 equals 8 to the x. To get y by itself, we need to add 5 to both sides. So 8 to the x plus 5 is equal to y. So that tells us that our inverse function, g inverse of x, is equal to 8 to the x plus 5. The domain of exponential functions, which is what our inverse is always the same. An exponential function always has a domain from negative infinity to positive infinity. The range will involve the asymptote. So let's go ahead and find out what the asymptote is. So notice that we have a plus 5 here. So this indicates that we're moving from 8 to the x. We're taking all the y values of 8 to the x, and we're moving them all up 5. So 8 to the x has an asymptote at y equals 0. That means the asymptote of this one is just going to be y equals 5. So in other words, this value will tell us what the asymptote is. So our asymptote here is going to be y equals 5, which tells us that our range is going to be everything above that. Because if we looked at this graph, our asymptote would be at 5, and our graph would look something like this. Every value would be above 5. So our range would be from 5 to infinity. To find our y-intercept, remember that for the y-intercept, we always know that x is equal to 0. So if we replace 0 in our function, then it would be 8 to the 0 plus 5. 8 to the 0 is 1. So basically we're dealing with 1 plus 5. So our intercept is going to have a y value of 6. So our intercept here is 0, comma 6. You can pause the video and try this one yourself if you would like to. So if we have this function, we want to write it in a friendly format first. So y equals log base 6 of x plus 4 over 3. We're going to switch the y and the x, so it's going to become x equals log base 6 of y plus 4 over 3. Then we're going to solve for y. In this case, we need to get rid of the log. So we're going to make the base on both sides 6. So on the left side, we'd end up with 6 to the x. And on the right side, the log base 6 and the base 6 cancel each other out. So we're just left with y plus 4 over 3. To get the y by itself, we're going to multiply both sides by 3. These would eliminate. So we're left with 3 times 6 to the x is equal to y plus 4. So then we're going to subtract 4 from both sides to get y by itself. And we're left with 3 times 6 to the x minus 4 is equal to y. So our inverse function would be g inverse of x is equal to 3 times 6 to the x minus 4. The domain for this function, as with all exponential functions, is from negative infinity to positive infinity. Now let's find the asymptote. So remember, this part of it tells us what the asymptote is. So our asymptote is going to be y equals negative 4. That means that our range values are going to be above negative 4. So it's going to be from negative 4 to infinity. The intercept, we're going to have to substitute 0 for x. So it's going to become 3 times 6 to the 0 minus 4. 6 to the 0 is 1, so we have 3 times 1 minus 4. 3 times 1 is 3, and if we subtract those, we end up with negative 1. So our intercept, our y-intercept, is going to be 0, negative 1.